They talked to several workers who said they worked with dozens of minors in this facility. So this was clearly an issue.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Let's get to some local news. This went incredibly viral last week. And it's genuinely insane news coming out of Reuters came out yesterday, thanks to reporters Joshua Schneier, Micah Rosenberg, and Christina Cook, about child labor at the Hyundai facility in Alabama. Let's go to their report. Underage workers, in some cases as young as 12, have recently worked at a metal stamping plant operated by Smart Alabama LLC, these people said. Smart, listed by Hyundai in corporate filings as a majority-owned unit, supplies parts for some of the most popular cars and SUVs built by the automaker in Montgomery, its flagship U.S. assembly plant. And we aren't talking about kids working in kid-friendly environments either. They really shouldn't be working at all or only in very limited circumstances. Kids should be learning, having fun in school, being kids. But we are not talking about kid-friendly environments. We're not talking about going down, to the family farm and milking a cow or, just some menial tasks in a safe location. That's not what's happening at this plant. A Reuters review of the records shows that Smart has been assessed with at least $48,515 in OSHA penalties since just 2013. In less than 10 years, we're talking about $50,000 in fines from OSHA, which $50,000 is not a lot. But when you think about how much OSHA can actually fine or does actually fine, especially under a Republican administration, $50,000 is a lot of money from OSHA. It indicates a big safety problem. And it was most recently filed just in the last year, in 2022. OSHA inspections at Smart have documented violations including crush and amputation hazards at the facility. Now, this is not more crazy or disgusting than the original article of children working at facilities with amputation hazards. But get this. The Attorney General's office has known about this since at least February. 5 months. 5 months Steve Marshall has known about child labor in Alabama. And his office had no comments to give to the Reuters reporters about whether or not there would be prosecutions in the case. Can you just imagine that? Having known about literal child labor in Alabama for 5 months, and that is not enough time to be able to tell reporters whether or not you're going to be doing prosecutions. Quoting from the article, Reuters learned of underage workers at the Hyundai-owned supplier following the brief disappearance in February of a Guatemalan migrant child from her family's home in Alabama. The police force in Enterprise, which is about 45 miles from the plant in Laverne, doesn't have jurisdiction to investigate possible labor law violations at the factory. Instead, the force notified the state attorney general's office after the incident. James Sanders, an Enterprise police detective, told Reuters. Mike Lewis, a spokesperson at the Alabama Attorney General's office, declined to comment. It's unclear whether the office or other investigators have contacted Smart or Hyundai about possible violations. 5 months! 5 months! They're sitting on this story for 5 months. The Attorney General's office has known about this issue for 5 months, and the only reason we know about it is because of Reuters. The only reason we know about it is because of Reuters. Let's contrast this total and complete lack of urgency, lack of moral clarity, lack of giving a damn about Hyundai exploiting children in a plant in Alabama with amputation hazards with his recent comments on Google. The Attorney General of the state of Alabama, the highest enforcer of the law in the state, unprompted, nobody asked him to do this, joined a letter with other state attorneys general who also apparently have nothing else better to do, stating that if Google does not give them the search results they want, they might sue. I mean, talk about
priorities.
I mean, good God. Talk about misplaced priorities. What about abortion? What's his urgency been like on this issue? Well, according to Parker Snyder, yet another columnist for Koch-funded, flat earth, military coup, crypto bro boosting propaganda outlet 1819 News, around 9:15 a.m. on Friday, June 24th, news of the court's decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization overruling Roe v. Wade reached Alabama. At 10:37 a.m., Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall released a statement promising that his office was immediately filing motions to dissolve any injunctions against, quote, pro-life bills held up in the court system. These would have to be dissolved before pro-life measures could go into effect in Alabama. It took 82 minutes. 82 minutes. Less than 2 hours for him to jump into action to ensure that the law that will force children in Alabama to carry incest, rape, pregnancies to term, to use the force of the state to impose his religious views on the bodies of others, less than 82 minutes for him to jump into action to enforce that policy. Yet after 5 months, almost half a year, they did not have a position that they could tell the press on the issue of child labor in a plant with rampant safety issues, to include amputation hazards. Much less having actually done anything about this specific issue or anything proactively to ensure safe working conditions for adults and to ensure enforcement of child labor law for minors. After 5 months, they had nothing that they could tell the press. Nothing at all.
It's just ridiculous.
And of course, like, I do want to make clear, just so that you, the listener, don't get the idea that this is some crazy idea that actually it's somebody else's jurisdiction to enforce child labor laws or anything else like that it's not in his wheelhouse, or even that there is no precedent. There absolutely is. I want to share this from you. Terry Gerstein for the Economic Policy Institute last year put together a really good report on how district attorneys and state attorneys general are fighting for workers. And in this case, children. She reports that state and local prosecutors have been bringing charges in a range of cases, including wage theft, misclassification of workers as independent contractors, payroll fraud, failure to pay unemployment insurance taxes, workers' compensation insurance fraud, labor trafficking, egregious workplace safety and health violations, workplace sexual assault, witness tampering, and retaliation. And we aren't just seeing these cases in a handful of places either. We're seeing them in California, Colorado, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Texas, Virginia, Washington. This isn't just out there kooky liberal stuff enforcing the law, enforcing laws that protect workers. And some jurisdictions are even going a step further in creating separate departments solely for worker protections, like San Diego DA Summer Stefan in 2021, like Queens DA Melinda Katz, like San Francisco DA Chesa Boudin in 2020, like Philadelphia DA Larry Krasner in 2019. Yet here in Alabama, a literal child labor case can sit in the Attorney General's office for 5 months and nobody know about it and nothing be done about it. It's insane.
It is, and like you said, it's a reflection of the priorities that we have from the Attorney General's office, and I think it really speaks to Alabama's issues in terms of law enforcement on behalf of working class people, and on behalf of children. We have child labor laws for a reason. We have minimum wage laws and overtime laws for a reason.
Right.
But those laws are only as good as they are enforced. And it's very clear that the state of Alabama has no interest in enforcing any laws that might actually help ordinary working people. Now, as you said, like, they will rush to go get their name in the press, to go get their name on Fox News, to jump into the latest controversy. It took, less than 90 minutes to get involved in the abortion issue as soon as the Supreme Court made their decision. But you can't do anything about children literally risking their life and limb right in your backyard. I mean, this is in the Montgomery area.
Yeah.
It's not even the other part of the state here.
He could probably walk to the place.
Right.
It would be a little bit of a trek. But apparently he doesn't have anything else better to do because he's getting ready to sue Google because it's not giving him the search results he wants. Right. So he's got the time, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was just so many issues that came up when you read this article from Reuters, and if you haven't read it yet, I just can't recommend it enough. But it speaks to the issues with our Attorney General, as you just laid out. It speaks to the lack of law enforcement when it comes to labor law. And our labor law, as we've discussed frequently on this show, is not sufficient. It is not good enough for working class people in this country. But even what we do have is insufficiently enforced. It speaks to the role of temp agencies in these sort of settings, because, of course, Hyundai is going to push the blame off to the temporary staffing agency that they claim they were using here, that brought these children in as workers. And anyone who's familiar with the auto industry or the auto parts supply chain industry knows that these temp staff agencies are a huge presence. And folks are often kind of told about, oh, we've got a new Toyota plant, we've got a new Hyundai plant, there's all these good jobs that are coming.
Right.
And then lo and behold, many of those people are actually funneled through staffing agencies where the work is temporary, it's precarious, it doesn't get the same amount of pay or benefits that the full-time folks are getting. And the use of these staffing agencies presents a major problem when it comes to situations like this, where an employer isn't even verifying who the hell they're employing.
Right. In the Reuters report, and Adam, we got a comment that says your audio is very quiet, but they can hear me, so
okay.
Maybe work on that. But the in the Reuters report, they talk about how they asked Hyundai for a comment, and Hyundai said something to the effect of, we follow the law, blah, 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 and basically we expect our contractors to also follow the law. And it shows exactly, when you've got a 12-year-old girl working in your facility, that's not something that you can just say like, oh, well, I didn't know. I expected my contract. Like, you can just literally look and see.
Somebody knew.
Yes, somebody knew. And in the report, they talked to several workers who said they worked with dozens of minors in this facility. So this was clearly an issue. This was clearly an issue that these Reuters investigators, who are not paid by the state of Alabama, were able to find out. And yet, The Alabama Attorney General has known about this for 5 months, and nothing. We're not seeing anything about arrests of the bosses at this plant. We're not seeing anything about fines. We're not seeing anything about civil penalties. Nothing at all from politicians in Montgomery about this. And of course, the second that workers try to come together and fix it themselves, politicians in Montgomery either would be absent or actively opposed to their organization.
Yeah, and one last thing I wanted to say on this is like, this is just another example of why it's so important that we have solidarity with our migrant brothers and sisters, because we see where immigrants are hyper-exploited and where employers use their precarious situations, their lack of legal status in some cases, their poverty status, their refugee status. Employers prey upon folks who are fleeing often terrible situations in their home countries and risking their lives to come over here to the United States just to try to make a better life for themselves. Right. And I know that there are those in the right-wing media who would love to divide and conquer working class people and love to have native-born Americans, pitted against migrants. But the way forward is through solidarity and recognizing that it doesn't do us any good as American workers to have other workers who are preyed upon because of their immigration status. At the end of the day, we're all in this together. We're all trying to sell our labor in order to survive, and we're all facing exploitation and oppression. So I think I just wanted to emphasize that before we move on from this story, is that it's very, very important that we not allow ourselves to be divided by immigration.
Right.
The employers love to bring people over that they can exploit and that they can use the threat of ICE and deportation against, that they can silence. And the key, the task for us in the labor movement is to organize. Mm-hmm. Is to organize these workers, to bring them into our movement and join together in solidarity.
Right. Yeah, these employers, they don't want open borders. They want borders just open enough that people can come in, but not so open that they have rights.
Right.
They
absolutely.
want people to be able to come in without rights that they can exploit, and that if they get too uppity, they can call ICE
and deport their entire family.
Yeah, and deport their entire family and be thugs for the boss, which is basically, especially under the Trump administration, what ICE was more or less reduced to: thugs
absolutely.
for the boss.
Yeah, and even for more white collar workers, when you're talking about visas.
Right.
Employer
totally dependent.
Visas.
Yeah, totally dependent on the employer.
So the immigration system is not set up to be beneficial for the immigrants themselves or for American workers either.
Right. Yeah, it definitely doesn't help us.
For the benefit of bosses.
Yeah. So just really, really, really disgusting story out of Alabama, out of Montgomery.
Yet again, the state of Alabama making national news for a disgrace.
Yeah.
We deserve better leaders in this state.
Yeah. A few people in the chat, Jeb says, rather than direct hiring, these suppliers also use third-party staffing agencies, often classified as independent contractors, just to skirt labor laws and keep themselves off the radar.
Right.
That's exactly what happened here.
And when something bad happens like this, when they get caught,
point the finger.
They can pass the buck.
Yeah.
Blame it on a staffing agency instead of taking accountability for their own actions.
Yeah, and these aren't this thing isn't happening at union plants. Strom says, I'm honestly not that surprised. Southern automobile parts suppliers are nightmares. Look at how BMW contracts hiring out to MAU in South Carolina. People working as, quote, temps for several years. Mm-hmm. Strom also says the Nissan plant in Canton, Mississippi has some crazy stuff like that going on, too. Yeah. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.